Okay guys, so today I'm going to show you how to install the NODIZ Pro standalone ignition ECU. Now the NODIZ is what's running the ignition on my bike carb converted Toyota 4AG engine. So the NODIZ is a fully mappable 3D ignition controller that you can use to upgrade older distributor-based ignition systems to more modern coil packs, or you can use it to run carburetors on more modern engines that do not feature a vacuum advanced distributor. Now to run the NODIZ, you are going to need a minimum of 3 things: a crankshaft position sensor, a trigger wheel, and a coil pack. To have a 3D ignition setup, you are also going to need something for a wall, which is going to be, in my case, a throttle position sensor. So today I'm going to show you how to install and connect a crankshaft position sensor, a coil pack, a trigger wheel, and also how to connect a throttle position sensor to the NODIZ and how to calibrate it. So first, let's talk about the crankshaft position sensor and the trigger wheel. Now the NODIZ works both with 36 and 60 tooth trigger wheels, and when installing the NODIZ you are going to run into one of 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 is going to be that your engine already has a trigger wheel and crankshaft position sensor setup. In that case you are going to connect that setup to the NODIZ and it's going to work just fine. Now in the case of my engine, which is a 4AG engine from the 80s that never came with any sort of trigger wheel, or crankshaft position sensor installed from the factory, I needed to fabricate, to come up with a solution. So when it comes to the trigger wheel, what I did is that thankfully there is a ready-made solution and it's made by Techno Toy Tuning, and the solution is one of their billet crankshaft pulleys along with one of their trigger wheels. This is a 36 tooth trigger wheel and it's of course what the NODIZ works great with. So that was a really simple thing to do. Just buy it, remove the stock pulley and install the Techno Toy Tuning crankshaft pulley and trigger wheel. Now when it comes to the crankshaft position sensor, because the 4AG engine never came with one from the factory, there's also no location where to install the crankshaft position sensor. So what I did is I designed and fabricated my own bracket. Now here's the prototype of the bracket, which later evolved into this, which is now a CNC made precision part that bolts into the oil pump. It's a really easy install and it works, with any sort of trigger wheel installed onto the 4AG. Now, if you have a 4AG engine and if you need to run a crankshaft position sensor, which is something you will need to do with any sort of aftermarket ECU, you can head over to my site. There's also a link in the description and you can support this channel by buying one of my crankshaft position sensor brackets. There have been already, quite a few purchases, lots of happy customers, so I can say that the part has been tested by me and a bunch of people all over the world and it works really fine. Now that is also a simple install. Remove the 2 bolts from the oil pump, bolt in the crankshaft position sensor bracket and install the crankshaft position sensor. Now here's the important part. To run the NODIZ, for the NODIZ to run the ignition properly, the empty tooth, the missing tooth of the trigger wheel has to hit the crankshaft position sensor when the engine is at 90 degrees before top dead center. So now the good thing about the NODIZ is that you do not have to be dead accurate with this, because you can adjust the base offset of the crankshaft angle later when you install it, but we have to be reasonably accurate, maybe to 5 or 6 degrees of crankshaft rotation. Now how it works is you first are going to put your engine into TDC, that is top dead center. What I did then is I simply got a protractor and figure out using a protractor approximately where 90 degrees before top dead center is. I then rotated the engine to that position to 90 degrees before top dead center and used one of the many different holes on the trigger wheel to install the trigger wheel on the crankshaft position, on the crankshaft pulley, in such a way that the missing tooth is now right, almost right next to the head of the crankshaft position sensor. So once that is done, you are pretty much, finished with the crankshaft position sensor and trigger wheel setup. When it comes to the crankshaft position sensor, NODIZ uses a Ford crankshaft position sensor, which is affordable, reliable, and readily available. Here are some part numbers, and you can buy this at almost any auto parts store in the world. So when it comes to the coil pack, the NODIZ again works great with a Ford coil pack. This is a standard Ford coil pack that you can find on a lot of late 90s Fords like Escorts, Focuses, Mondeos, and so on. It's again reliable, affordable, and readily available. Here's a picture. You can just go with this picture into a auto parts store and tell them, give me this, it's a Ford coil pack, and they should be able to find it really easily. This is how I bought mine. Now, this is the NODIZ runs a waste spark system. What does that mean? That means that cylinders 1 and 4 and cylinders 2 and 3 are fired simultaneously. So this is how you are going to connect your spark plug wires. You are going to connect cylinders 1 and 4 to this side of the coil pack, and you are going to connect cylinders 2 and 3 to this side of the coil pack. So the important thing is you can mix. It doesn't matter if you connect 1 here and 4 there, or 4 there and 1 here. That doesn't matter because that side of the coil pack is firing them both at the same time. What you must not mix up is cylinders 2 and 4, and 1 and 3, for example. In that case, your engine is most likely not going to start. So once that is done, once you have installed the coil pack and connected the spark plug wires, the only thing you need to do is figure out a location for your coil pack. Now this is going to depend on the particular space, and infrastructure inside your engine bay. In my case, I was super lucky because the Ford coil pack fit perfectly into the old bolt holes, of my old stock ignition coil. But even if that isn't the case in your engine bay, you should still be able to find some space for it pretty easily because it's a relatively compact part. So for all of this to work, we of course need to first of all provide power to the NODIZ, and then we need to connect the crankshaft position sensor, the throttle position sensor, and the coil pack to the NODIZ as well. Now the easiest and most affordable way to do this is to simply buy the NODIZ with its ready-made little wiring harness. This is what I did, and it's something I recommend that you do because it will save you a lot of time and money, because the wiring harness is really well made and it's affordable. I did some basic calculations, how much money it would take, for me to make it, and it was way more expensive than what Motorsport Electronics sells the wiring harness for. So definitely get it because the install is made a lot simpler. All you gotta do is simply connect the wiring harness to the NODIZ, to the crankshaft position sensor, to the coil pack, and then later also to the throttle position sensor. When it comes to the install of the NODIZ itself, the NODIZ resists heat, it resists water, so you can install it wherever you need to. But I recommend that you install it in the passenger compartment because it's going to make the Bluetooth connection a lot easier, a lot more stable, and it's also going to make easier for you to connect a serial cable to the NODIZ so you can tune it with your laptops. You can tune your ignition maps. You can tune your ignition maps both through Bluetooth and a cable connection. So, it's better to have it honestly in the passenger compartment. Then you can also watch the little lights on the NODIZ flash as you drive. Now, to install it in the passenger compartment, what I did is I made a small hole in the firewall, then unpinned the NODIZ connector, pulled the wires inside, repinned everything and connected it. To be honest, it was pretty simple. Of course, do not forget to use a proper hole ring on the wire to prevent any water coming into your passenger compartment. Just to secure the NODIZ, you can use simply a double-sided Velcro tape and secure it onto the carpeting in your passenger compartment. Now, when it comes to providing power and ground to the NODIZ, there's many different ways you can do this, but the safest And best way to do this is to use a automotive relay. And this is what I did, and it's something I recommend you do because it's definitely best practice when it comes to automotive electronic connections. What you can buy is the most simple, the cheapest, most standard automotive relay, which just has 4 terminals on it. So here's a little diagram of the relay. Here are the terminals, and here's what you are going to connect to each of the terminals. Now, when it comes to the wire powering the NODIZ, I decided to use my old 12-volt ignition switched wire that used to provide power to my ignition coil. Now, you can use any sort of 12-volt ignition switched wire. It doesn't have to be an ignition coil wire, but it does have to be ignition switched. So what does this mean? It means that when the key is in the off position, there should be no lights on the NODIZ. When you turn the key into the on position, the red light on the NODIZ should light up and it should stay lit. So if you have connected everything and if the red light on the NODIZ lights up and stays lit when you turn the key into the on position, you can attempt to start the engine now. Now, when you're cranking the engine, the red light needs to stay lit and you should see the green and blue lights flashing alternatively on the NODIZ. This means that the coils are being fired. The blue side is one side, the blue light is one side of the coil and the green light is the other side of the coil. So if these two things are flashing and if the red light stays lit, your engine is most likely going to start. So if your engine starts and everything is running smoothly, we can then proceed to adjust our base offset angle. Now, this is done in order to ensure that your coils are being fired at exactly the right point in your crankshaft rotation. So what we're doing here, we're actually correcting the little tiny offset that we most likely had when we were installing the trigger wheel and the crankshaft position sensor at the very beginning of this video. Now, how do we adjust the base offset angle? Well, it's pretty simple with the NODIZ. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to press down and hold down button A on the NODIZ. That is this button, the outermost button. While holding button A, we are going to turn the key into the on position. The red light on the NODIZ is going to light up. We are then going to release button A. The green light on the NODIZ is going to flash 4 times when we release button A. If that happens, it means that you are in base offset adjusting mode. Then we are going to disconnect our fuel supply because when doing this we do not want the engine to start, because in this mode the NODIZ fires one of its coils at what it believes to be exactly top dead center. So what we're going to do here is that we are going to get someone to help us and we're going to get someone to crank the engine for us. While the engine is being cranked, we are going to get our timing gun and point it at the timing marks on the engine. And what we should be seeing is that the engine is firing, that the coils are being fired exactly at DDC. That means that your timing mark should align exactly with your top dead center mark every time the timing gun flashes. If that doesn't happen, we're going to adjust the base offset with the NODIZ. So how to adjust it? It's really easy. Again, we're going to press and hold down button A to increase the offset, or we are going to press and hold down button B to decrease the offset until our timing mark aligns perfectly with the top dead center mark on our engine as it's being cranked. Once these marks align, you can be sure that your coils are being fired at exactly the right time when they need to be fired, and that your ignition is basically running as it should be. Now that we have a fully set up 2D ignition system, it's time to provide a load reference to the NODIZ and have a 3D ignition system. Now the NODIZ works with any sort of OEM 3-wire throttle position sensor. And on the NODIZ wiring harness you are going to find 3 wires that need to be connected to the 3 wires on the throttle position sensor. On the NODIZ wiring harness you are going to have your black wire, which is your ground wire, your pink wire, which is your throttle position sensor signal wire, and your purple wire, which is your throttle position sensor voltage reference wire. Now, on your throttle position sensor, you are also going to have 3 wires, of course, but you do not know which one needs to be connected to which of the wires on the NODIZ wiring harness. So for example, on my TPS, I have a blue wire, a yellow wire, and a black wire. So how to figure which one is which? Well, you need to get a multimeter and set it to measure resistance in the order of 1 or 2 mega ohms. You are then going to connect the probes to 2 of the wires, to any 2 wires on the throttle position sensor. You are then going to sweep the throttle, and you are going to watch what happens with the resistance. So what I first did is that I connected my probe to my black wire and my blue wire, and my voltage stayed the same. Now this tells me that I have found the ground and the voltage reference wires. Now I do not know which is which, however. So what I did then is I connected my probes to my yellow wire and my black wire, and in that case my voltage started low and then increased. So this told me that I have found the ground wire and the TPS signal wire. Now, because I know, because I had this information, I was able to, deduce, like Sherlock Holmes, that the black wire is most likely the ground wire. To confirm this, I then connected the probes to my yellow wire and my blue wire. In this case, the resistance reading started high and then reduced. So this confirmed 100% that the black wire is the ground wire and that the yellow and blue wires are the TPS signal and the TPS voltage reference wires. Now, because my voltage stayed the same when I connected it to the black wire and the blue wire, I know that the blue wire is also the TPS voltage reference wire. And now I know which of the wires are which, and this is also how you need to connect them to the wires on the NODIZ wiring harness. So once that is done, you need to calibrate your throttle position sensor. Now this is again really easy with the NODIZ, and all you have to do is press and hold down button B, which is the innermost button on the NODIZ, turn the key to the on position, and then release the button. Both of the blue and green lights of the NODIZ will flash several times, and this will tell you that you are in the TPS calibration mode. Once in this mode, simply, sweep the throttle a few times from open to close a little bit quicker, and you will see that the green and blue lights increase in their speed, of flashing as the throttle gets more and more open. So this basically gives the calibration information to the NODIZ, and you are pretty much done. To confirm that you have done the calibration properly, simply sweep the throttle really slowly and watch that the LEDs on the NODIZ increase in their flashing speed as you open the throttle more and more. So once this is done, once you're happy with the calibration, simply turn the key back into the off position, and your calibration TPS data is going to be stored into the NODIZ. So with the TPS calibrated, we are pretty much done with our NODIZ install and have a running 3D ignition system. Now, the NODIZ also supports running coolant sensors, intake air temperature sensors. It has a tachometer output, it has a output for shift lights, and a bunch of other things. But installing these ones is, to be honest, pretty simple, and to cover them all in one video would make a 2-hour boring video. So if you want to know how to do that, go to the link in the description, which will send you to the NODIZ manual, and you can check out all of these details and more about the NODIZ in the manual, and also on the NODIZ website, which is also in the description. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the install. In the next videos featuring the NODIZ, we're going to be talking about the NODIZ Android digital dashboard, and we're also going to be covering the NODIZ Easy Tune software, which is used to tune ignition maps, with the NODIZ. So definitely stay tuned for that, and it will be, fun and useful if you are running or interested into buying the NODIZ. So that's pretty much it for today. As always, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to share, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you soon on the D4A channel.